The 25th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Support for Labor Banquet, sponsored by Black Workers for Justice, took place on April 5th at the North Carolina Association of Educators building in Raleigh, North Carolina. The theme of this year's program was We Charge Genocide, Stand Up, Organize, and Resist. This theme came from a movement that began in 1951 when African-American activists William Patterson, Paul Robeson, and others collaborated on a document called We Charge Genocide, the historic petition to the United Nations for relief from a crime of the United States government against the Negro people. It chronicled the countless lynchings of black people that had gone unpunished since the end of the Civil War. Banquet speakers held that those charges are still relevant in today's struggles for public housing for Katrina survivors, the Jena 6, police brutality, incarceration, etc., and show continuing state-sanctioned racism and violence against people of color. The keynote speaker was Cindy Wisner, an organizer for the Global Grassroots Justice Alliance and an outreach organizer for the U.S. Social Forum in Atlanta last June.
Peace, we want peace and liberty in this world.
5 members of the bargaining committee was terminated. Not for work performance, not for attendance, none of those things. We was terminated for union activity. You know, protected rights that we have. That's what we were terminated for. So, you know, I was asked to be brief. We've been out of work over a year. As of today, we've been out on the street a year. We was promised arbitration by our international, and the international said that, and this is UAW, International said that the company had agreed to a speedy arbitration. 6 to 8 weeks. We're still out on the street without arbitration, without a date, a confirmed date that we know of that's set in stone. We're still on the street. So with that, this campaign is not about a fight between the 5 of us and our international. It is the employer is the one that terminated us. Our international do not hire and fire. So yes, we disagree with things with our international, but this campaign is against the employer for wrongful termination. So if you want more information, please go to our website, justice5.com, or see us after the program is over with. We'll be here and we'll answer any questions. But I thank you for this opportunity to come and address the crowd here. This has been a wonderful evening.
So in honor of being here and being able to bring the message from different groups all across the country that are doing this very intentional and deliberate work, we're here to be able to say that part of what's happening in this country is that we're seeing change, right? We're seeing that there is another world coming, and we know that from our experience that basically social movements are becoming the protagonists in changing the world we live in. And there's a lot of momentum, people in masses of numbers voting and getting mobilized. And I think that one of the things that we were talking about is how do we know that we have to build our independence as a social movement and also ensure that we're part of the change that's going to happen. All of our hope and collective hope is that we do away with the Bush regime and do away with what's messed up the entire world, but we also need to be clear that whoever is in power next, right, is only going to be effective through the pressure of the people. And that is the only way, right? It is only through action and pressure can we guarantee the change to happen. There's some lessons that I think the times call for, is that right now we need to have counter-hegemonic thinking and demands. And what that means is a new expression of our politics, and something that's grounded in our history, in the lessons learned, but we need to not repeat the lessons of the past. And in fact, we need to make new errors, and hopefully not make new errors, but we need to stop making the old mistakes over and over again, right? And part of the counter-hegemonic thinking is really saying that this moment calls for a principle of liberation for all, so that we don't fall into the trap that certain people's rights are pushed at the expense of others, where we ourselves end up doing the job of the bosses, the landowners, the capitalists, the imperialists, right? Where it is that we have to be really creative in, for example, our articulation of our demands, right? And one of the examples I give is that when we in the immigrant rights movement are fighting for driver's license, and that we begin to demand for people who don't have a right to get driver's license, like transgender folks. We need to begin to struggle when folks are fighting for the right for ex-felons to vote. We need to fight for the millions of undocumented people who don't have a voice in this country, but have a right to vote, as well as young people. We need to figure out how it is that when we're fighting for the right to organize or unionize, that we don't do it at the expense of other workers who have historically been marginalized or not considered workers. And when we fight against things like gentrification, that when we're negotiating with the county or the city or whoever we're negotiating with, we don't settle for community benefits agreements that only benefit certain segments of the community and inversely affect the most marginalized in the community. And when we talk about trade agreements, we have to be able to change the language that it's not only bad for workers here, but it's basically devastating the planet and devastating whole nations and peoples. So these are the kind of things that we need to get into a practice of, is not only fighting for our issues, but starting to undermine the way we even think and box ourselves in, because one gain for one community is usually at the expense of another, and we need to stop doing that. So with that, I want to say congratulations to the 25 years of making history, of challenging us all, and to 25 more. And I want to say in my language, viva, viva los trabajadores afrodescendientes por la justicia, viva Black workers for justice, viva.
Para los niños de todo el mundo queremos paz y libertad. For the children of the world, we want peace and liberty. Paz, queremos paz y libertad en este mundo. Peace, we want peace and liberty in this world.
The new airline of the CIA is Aero Contractors. During the Vietnam War, it was Air America.
Fight for their rights as people, fight for their rights as human beings, fight for the rights of others who cannot defend themselves.
This is a wound. This is the closest to a genocide that any of us may ever face in our lives.
Thousands of students on almost 80 campuses across the country are interrupting their daily routine to protest this war in Iraq.
The company is getting rid of workers that have worked there 10 and 12 years because the company says they didn't know that they were undocumented. You know, workers shouldn't be taken out in handcuffs. The CEOs and the plant management should be taken out in handcuffs.
Look at all people, all history, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass. They all said unite. Look what they did. Look what they accomplished.
Para los niños de todo el mundo queremos paz y libertad. For the children of the world, we want peace and liberty. Paz, queremos paz y libertad.